Hi, good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for joining this at this very first episode of the SecurityBridge Research Labs update. In the next 30 minutes, we'd like to take you through some updates from the SecurityBridge Research Labs and conclude with a personal project I'm happy to share with you. So, my name is Joris van der Vis. I'm the director of the SecurityBridge Research Labs and happy to update you on the work we do. The SecurityBridge Research Labs is dedicated to finding 0 days in SAP and try to report them in a responsible way to SAP so they can provide fixes for customers that customers can then deploy, all in order to run their business critical SAP systems in a more secure way. Over the past, roughly 20 years, 150 0 days have been reported to SAP that way. They were all patched. And I mean, this is great, not just for our customers to run more secure, but we're also aiming to let the whole SAP ecosystem benefit from that, as in the end, SAP systems, they run the backbone of the global economy and process enormous amounts of sensitive and business critical data. So it's important to make sure they run secure. Let's move on to some of the findings from past quarter. Just focusing on the past quarter, we have been doing a lot in the past, but let's not zoom in too much on that. What we found past 3 months, or what happened, is that 3 of the 0 days that we found and were reported to SAP are actually fixed. All are present in modern SAP systems, so in S/4HANA. And next to those findings, we initiated a project together with a partner of ours in the Netherlands to scan the internet for specific energy sector related SAP systems, but a bit more on that later. Let's first zoom in a bit on the 3 reported and fixed vulnerabilities. 2 of them are in the category of missing authorization checks. Again, as mentioned, in the area of S/4HANA. A third one is fixed in the category of code injection. This is a specific category we started looking into last year and with quite a couple of high-risk findings there, because typically code injection vulnerabilities pose a big risk in SAP landscapes. Why? Because, I mean, if you're able to inject any ABAP code free of choice into an SAP system, you can basically do anything in that system. Typically, these patches are rated with a CVSS score of a 9+, but not this one. As you can see, it's rated on a CVSS score 2. And that's understated in our view. Let's dive in a bit deeper there. By the way, we cannot share any specifics on the findings that were fixed yet, because we have an agreement with SAP that we will not disclose any details for at least 3 months after the release of a patch, to give customers the needed time to apply fixes. And we try to stick to that, to not disclose any details for now. Why this finding has a lower CVSS score, and this is a suspicion, but we suspect that SAP has lowered the CVSS score in this particular case because you can only inject ABAP code into existing programs that are in specific namespaces, which might be seen as a limitation. However, we found that in all modern S/4HANA systems, there are default objects present in these namespaces, and I will not name the specific namespaces, but it basically means that all prerequisites for exploitation are present. So in our view, the CVSS score should be much higher. We found similar vulnerabilities in SAP, in S/4HANA. At least 3 nodes, 3 patches were supplied for those findings in the past 6 months, and they all had a CVSS score of 9 plus. So I think important to mention here is this node deserves your attention. Even though it has a low CVSS score, make sure to not overlook it, make sure to not neglect it, treat it as a node with a higher severity, and make sure to apply patches. As mentioned, we also started a project together with the Dutch Institute for Vulnerability Disclosure, with which we worked before quite closely. And for example, scanned the whole internet for a specific CVE 2025-31324 that did quite a lot of damage last year. This was the Java specific patch that supposedly is also used in the JLR breach, even though that's not confirmed. But a lot of other companies were affected there as well. And we scanned the whole internet and reached out to those owners of those systems and warned them, hey, be careful, your internet connected SAP system might be vulnerable and you need to apply patches. This new project is really about scanning the internet for specifically for industries, industry solution utilities based SAP systems. Because we want to see if we can help better secure the energy sector, which is labeled as critical infrastructure and actually targeted quite often in geopolitical conflicts, as we have seen over the past years. The project has just started. We will keep you updated on the process and the results. But just know that this is also being started. That was the official update of the SecurityBridge Research Labs. Now, a bit of a hat off of my official position and a hat on for a project, a more personal project of mine that I did in my free time over the past, 3-4 months. This is a project that is endorsed by SecurityBridge, but it's actually being done by me and released as an open source project under the OWASP flag, and helps and aims to help customers better protect themselves and raise awareness for the topic specifically of connectivity between SAP systems. It's called SAP Map, and it tries to do exactly that: map SAP systems in your network. As mentioned, this is a personal project of mine, but endorsed by SAP as they support, by SecurityBridge as they support that mission to try and make the world more secure. I simply can and will not show all the functionality here now because the scope broadened quite a bit while building, and time is limited in this webinar. But for you all, this is a first public sneak peek into what it does. Today's the official release of the tooling, and I'm happy to share a bit more about it. It's a Python-based tool that really stands on the shoulder of a lot of other open source SAP-specific tools and projects. I included many of the public and open source SAP tools you might know, like the Nmap SAP port scanning functionality. There are SAP Metasploit modules. There is the PySub modules or the PySub project started by Martin Gasho, and many, 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 many other projects. Too many to name them all. What I did, I basically bundled all of them into SAP Map. And the idea is to try and scan your SAP systems, somewhere find one way in, and from there map all these systems in the landscape and try to take them over. because this is an often neglected and underrated risk, because SAP systems typically are so connected that if you breach one SAP system, you can breach the whole landscape. And this is what we want to raise awareness for. The initial access in this case is done via some known and public exploits. By the way, there will be no 0 days, nor no new 0 days in the tooling, because that would definitely not be a good idea. But there are, for example, the quite known gateway exploit is there. We build in support for 10K Blaze, also known in the SAP world for attacking your message server. There is the CVE 2025-31324 we mentioned before, default accounts, and several others. From there, once you have an initial foothold, the tooling tries to move laterally via different means. Can be RFC destinations in ABAP or Java destinations to other systems, but also cracking the secure store, get plain text passwords, reuse them to move laterally throughout the landscape. Good to mention is that this was all built with the help of AI, and it took me a couple of months to build. I have a lot of domain knowledge. I can build some software, but I'm not the best developer. I can say if you combine the two, so domain knowledge and AI to help you build stuff, it gets really powerful. It would definitely otherwise take several years. I was now able to do this in a couple of months. Since there were some worries that in the wrong hands the tooling might be abused, we decided to go for a controlled release, even though there are no 0 days in it. And most of the functionality, as I mentioned, is already somewhere there on the internet, be it scattered though. And that's why we decided that it's preferable to give defenders a head start here. I'm really happy. We are really happy from the OWASP initiative, because that's where it's launched, to share it with defenders. You see there's a link at the bottom, also the QR code you can scan. It will lead you to a registration page, and there you can tell you're interested. And if we think you are allowed to use the tool, we are happy to share a version with you and happy to get any feedback. Of course, slides are just slides. Let me try and make it show you at least in a live demo. Let me share another session, and then we should be good to go. Let me change to another screen in a second. So yes, this should work. What we have is a graphical user interface, allowing you to scan your network for SAP systems. What I'm scanning right now is just one particular SAP system where I know the IP address of, but you can scan whole IP address ranges, for example. Typically what you will see is SAP systems, and let's say a lot of unauthenticated information you can find from the outside. There is a lot of functionality. It typically starts with scanning. You can scan for all the vulnerabilities that I mentioned before, but even better, and that's the scope for now, we have an auto pound functionality that combines all those vulnerabilities. Let me deselect this one to make it a bit more fast, and will basically automate everything for you. It's like a mini SAP pen test, but then on steroids and fully automated. In this case, you can basically sit back, but as an operator, you also have the power to really interact and do a lot of the stuff manually. As mentioned, there is tons of functionality built in. Way too much to show all here now, but let's for now just let the auto pound option run for a while. And what it will do, in this case, it already, that first system I scanned was vulnerable for a gateway exploit. It used OS command injection to create a user there, retrieve all RFC destinations to other systems, map those on the map. That's exactly what you see happening now. Let me zoom out a little bit. You see new systems popping up, but they are still green boxes, meaning they're not bound yet. But as you already see, there is a connection from ABAP to this Java system. There is a connection here that is used. There is a plain text password here. I will not show you, but when I click, you can see the plain text. That is because the tooling was able to decrypt the secure store of this ABAP system and use those credentials to connect to this Java system and pound that, take that over by creating a user there. But it also allows for remote code execution. You can basically do anything in that system. That means we have an exploitation menu now. You can create users, you can extract data, password hashes, download any data there. But for now, let it run just a little bit longer. You see also some other systems here are already bound via RFC destinations that are overprivileged. This is exactly one of the things that are important to stress. Don't create connections with too many authorizations, and don't create connections from low security zones to high security zones. While this runs, let me also tell that this is a graphical tool. We thereby hope to make it a bit more user-friendly, or at least for management to better understand what's happening. I've been involved in quite some pen testing exercises, and in many cases, when you deliver a pen test report, if there's too many technical details, and for the technical guys, that's fine, but it's easy to overwhelm management. And sometimes a picture just says more than 1,000 words. That's why the tooling is here. I think our auto pound option is almost finished, but what you can already see is that out of these systems, many were pound. You can see that with a lightning symbol. It basically means you have full system access to that system. And you can see more or less the whole landscape gets mapped and gets taken over. And yeah, I mean, if this is not saying it, then I don't know what is. This is all done without even providing one user or password. You just, in many cases, need one way in, and from there, take over the rest of the landscape. There's much more functionality. I will not show all of it. Maybe just one thing, if the auto pound functionality is ready, I will let it run a bit longer. What you can see, by the way, it's also taking into account on-premise to BTP connections. You see there's a BTP tenant here that's also taken over. The auto pound functionality is completed. Now, in addition, you can do much more, but maybe one of the things that is interesting is to show you that there is a business impact option where you can run ABAP impact scenarios, but it's also there for other system types. And what it will do, it will give you a bit of a sense of what the business impact is of the taking over of this system. For example, it will tell you that in this particular system, there are 25 employees in the HR module that have a total annual compensation of 1.8 million euros. In addition, you can see the names, you can see their compensation. So all to illustrate that it's really about that business data. And there's a lot of other scenarios, for example, also vendors that have bank details exposed, or sales orders with a total revenue of 3.6 million euros. Again, with a code snippet, with some details, just some records to actually prove and show that the data is really accessible. Again, there's much more, but for now, I want to conclude it here. This was the more unofficial part of the webinar. Let me go back to my presentation and conclude it here. There is room for some questions. We have a couple of minutes to look at some of them. I see some questions like, if SAP has classified the vulnerability as CVSS2, but you suggest it should be higher, does your tool give us that clarity? For example, in July, talking about vulnerability of April, we are already delayed. Yeah, so this is hard. What we typically do, and in this case, we haven't done it. Maybe we still should, but we typically, when we think that a CVSS is lower than it should be, we go into discussion with SAP. Honest thing here, we haven't for this particular one, and maybe we still should. We have done that quite a few times in the past. Typically, SAP leaves that also to customers, and I must be honest, I think in many, if not almost all cases, the CVSS scores are quite accurate. I think here there was some misjudgment maybe from the SAP side. So I think it's fair to say that this is really an exception. So in most cases, it is quite accurate, to be honest. What are the boundaries of source input of SAP Map for BTP? Assume sub-account destinations, integration suite, cloud connector, SM59, external links, any other focus endpoints. Yeah. So what is built in now is definitely not all. For example, we can harvest ABAP systems for OAuth tokens or client secrets from BTP. If that's in the OA, what is it, to C transaction config, then we can harvest that and use those to call the BTP APIs. There is an API in BTP that will allow you to harvest plain text credentials in destinations, so we make use of that. Also, if you have indeed SM59 connections where there is a SSL certificate, we can harvest that. That is there already. But as I mentioned, this tool is now open source. Well, it's not completely open source yet. It will be in the end. But for now, please register to get a first copy. And please provide feedback. If you see additional options for source input to BTP, I'm happy to learn that. So that's definitely a good thing to do. No. Well, the next question says, will SAP Map provide integration with SecurityBridge Event Monitor to expose threats to SIEM interfaces? So a couple of things to mention there. Basically, everything that SAP Map does is already being picked up and monitored by SecurityBridge. So you're not blind there. That's the good news. It's a tool that is rather noisy. So it can be used to test your SOC, for example. But good to know is that SecurityBridge will pick up a lot of the stuff that is happening out there. Will there be integration? Officially, no. But developments are young. We don't know where things will end eventually. But for now, there is no integration foreseen yet. Other than that, it will pick up most of the actions that it does. Are there things on the roadmap for BTP for this year? Firefighter process example given. The honest answer, I don't know by heart. I guess this specific question is now more focused on the security bridge roadmap and not so much on SAP Map as an open source tool. So Security Bridge has an official roadmap, and I don't know that by heart. It's also not in scope of this particular webinar, but what I would suggest to do is check the official roadmap that is available in the knowledge base of Security Bridge. And there you can find everything that is on the roadmap. If for whatever reason there is something that you think should be on the roadmap, please do raise a feature request, and we will definitely consider adding that. But that is more something for the product development team, not so much for the research labs. That is specifically the focus for today's session. And as a last question, will we get the deck so we can get the registration link? Yes, absolutely. It will be shared. Let me also see if I can put the registration link here in the chat. I'm not sure if, yeah, let me get it from here. Let me copy paste that. So at least it's there for now. I'm not sure. I think this should work. Let me put it in the chat as well. I guess it's there. That was the last question. I hope the content was great for you. Thanks for joining, and I hope until next time. Thanks.